If things couldn't get any worse for Kamala Harris, Donald J. Trump just made sure they did. He releases the absolute atom bomb of campaign destroyers. Kamala Harris's campaign was already wrecked. After this, it's over. It's a story I'm going to bring you here in just 1 minute. Huge favor, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do. Make sure your bell is checked to all. If you end up liking the content that I'm about to provide you, I'd love your support. And rather than just ask for support, I'll give you something in return. That something's restrictedrepublic.com, the platform Lisa Haven and I created to bring you all the news you can only find on that platform, restrictedrepublic.com. Discount code independence, $4 a month for 2 years, plus 14 days for free. And again, if you like what I provide you here, I'd love your support. And rather than just take a donation, I want to give you more news. Can't wait to see you over there. But for now, let's get back to this broadcast. So David Harris Jr. publishes this clip. Something that most would have just skipped by. But as he says, everyone needs to watch this clip of Trump talking about, oh, you read it right, eliminating the federal income tax to some guys in the Bronx, New York barber shop. And these guys weren't bored by what was said. No, they were absolutely intrigued, listening in intently and rightfully so. Just let's review it together, and then we'll discuss it right after.
With all this extra revenue we're going to be bringing into the country. So do you believe at some point in time we could find a way, once the country's back on its feet and getting enough revenue and paid off our debt, do you think it's possible to find a way to eliminate federal taxes?
There is a way.
And how do you feel about it?
In the old days, when we were a smart country, in the 1890s and all, this is when the country was relatively the richest it ever was. It had all tariffs. It didn't have an income tax.
Yes, sir.
One of the most important questions is Trump continues to take questions one-on-one. Kamala Harris, still no press conferences. I think she's going to go all the way through to the election without doing one because she has nothing to offer. We've talked about it, but this is more important.
1890, 1880, we had so much money, they had to set up committees, blue ribbon committees, how to spend our wealth. We had no idea how to spend it with so much money. Then we went to the income tax system, and the rest is sort of history. But no, there is a way. I mean, if what I'm planning comes out, it's a great question, by the way.
Everyone could attain the American dream.
You're a pretty sophisticated cat, you know.
Everyone could attain the American dream if it wasn't for the high cost, the burden of high taxes, and we're taxed at every step of the way. Yeah. When we make it, when we spend
regulations. And regulations.
Absolutely.
So I cut more regulations in 4 years than any other president by 4 times. Yeah, let's go. You would ask one question.
The captivated audience, listening intently. Trump providing something of substance. Removing the federal income tax. You heard him reference 1880 and 1890. Well, what happened right around, let's say, 1909? Something actually extremely significant to our country, otherwise known as the 16th Amendment. You see it here. 61st Congress of the United States of America. Begun and held at the city of Washington on Monday, the 15th day of March, 1909. The 16th Amendment is passed. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration, and our lives change forever. But how could he remove it? How could he get rid of it? How could he simply reform this tax that everyone says is so impossible? Forbes gives us some insight into this. They put up a video. I'll put a link if you go to restrictedrepublic.com, or if you're there, it will be in the link below to this YouTube video. It's a great one to watch. But here's the article referring to that video. Trump on tariffs. Can we replace income taxes? The video starts simply. Robert Golder starts. Everyone acknowledges that tax reform is hard. Lawmakers have always wanted to lower people's taxes, but at the same time, they don't want to blow a hole in the federal budget deficit. If we didn't spend so damn much, we wouldn't have such a big problem. It's already big enough. Well, wouldn't it be great if there was some utopian revenue source that we could draw from to get a little bit of extra revenue to pay for our precious tax cuts without the consequential political pain? Some people think they stumbled upon such a pot of gold, he states. And it's been right there in front of us since the earliest days of our republic, which Trump just referred to, which is tariffs, which is why we were such a wealthy nation in 1880 and 1890, but we also didn't have such overblown government spending. So we got to put this all into terms here. So we asked some questions to another economic expert. Joe, now we've got to be honest, this is President Trump's idea. He's the major proponent of this, and I won't try to conceal the fact that it strikes me as a little bit outside the norm. So let me ask you this. Should we take Trump seriously when he suggests we can use tariffs to pay for income tax cuts? Well, yes, Joseph Thorndike answers. Basically, I think we should. Trump, he revived this idea against all logic and available evidence that tariffs, they could be the foundation of the federal finance just like they were in the 19th century. But that was a long time ago. Different time, different economy, bigger government spending now. I'll keep saying that over and over because it offsets their argument here in just 1 minute. Still hasn't stopped Trump from saying he wants to use revenue from those higher tariffs to pay for tax cuts in other taxes, like the corporate income tax, maybe others too. And I think we should take that seriously. But of course, like any article against Trump, they're going to try to diffuse it a bit. Bob, you've got that exactly right. Tariffs are very regressive. And this is the argument in long and short behind this. If we raise tariffs, the cost of goods lift up for the consumer. So in essence, it's just simply another tax that's passed along to the consumer. So instead of income tax, which the tariffs would buy down, the cost of goods, which costs more, would offset it, and the consumer would still be giving the same amount of money out of their pocket. Not taking into consideration that we could also cut government spending, which we need to. Not taking into consideration that you would be in control of what you spend, and not taking into consideration that there is still supply and demand, and not taking into consideration that we can force more manufacturing domestically, forcing those goods coming inbound to lower in price. So this increased tariff would then keep everything dead level. They throw all those arguments away because it would make a lot of sense. If you want me to do a full broadcast on that, put it in the comments below, because it's actually a lot simpler than people want you to believe, because then you might actually understand it. And they don't want you to understand anything government does, because if you don't understand what government does, government appears to be this big monstrosity that nobody can control. It really doesn't need to be that way. It wasn't meant to be that way. What was different in 1880 and 1890 to today? An overblown government today. One somewhat in check in 1880 and 1890. So the most outlandish proposal here is to actually repeal the income tax altogether, Golder states. Get rid of them all. And pay for that hole in the budget with revenues from tariffs. They go into the exact amount. What is the total federal revenue? Hasn't exceeded 90%. All right, so here are some inconvenient facts for Donald Trump. The contribution of tariffs to total federal revenue hasn't exceeded 90% since the Civil War, which that was a while ago. The tariff contribution has also been declining steadily since 1890. President William McKinley, who Trump talks about often, they're right in that respect. He was unable to stop the slide, well, because he also wanted a larger government, but that's okay. We could just push that aside too. Oh, we're going to cite the Washington Post now, who says recently we had about $3 trillion a year that we collect from income taxes. This is actually very good math here. $3 trillion a year that we collect from income taxes. The amount of goods we import is about $3 trillion. So if you were to offset those two, you would have to tax those goods at an equivalent $3 trillion. $3 trillion to offset $3 trillion, which would basically, as they're stating, double the cost for those inbound goods. It will go from $3 trillion that we import now, put a $3 trillion tariff on top of it, you double the price. However, They never take into account the fact that we can reduce the size of government, then we wouldn't need so much damn money, and then the tax cuts can flow through. Of course not. Okay, so what's the bottom line of all of this? The question's asked. Should we dismiss it as a harebrained scheme? Yeah, it's tempting, but I don't think so. The tariff contribution to total revenue doesn't have to be Trump's 100%. Bingo. Because he's already said he's going to reduce the size of government. This is a destroyer to Kamala Harris. An absolute destroyer. You have people at Forbes now saying, wait, hey, this guy's got an idea. All we get is word salad out of the other one. She ain't going to come up with anything that makes any difference. This man's actually putting, well, money back in the pockets of Americans. Yes, granted, his plan in its purest form may not work as he outlined, which it very seldom does, because when you get through some of the mechanisms, you have to adjust multiple mechanisms to get it to work, but he can't do that today. No one could expect that. But they're saying he's heading in the right direction. New tariffs could still raise a lot of money, just not $3 trillion. Of course not. If you cut government spending by $1.5 trillion, you only have to raise another $1.5 trillion to offset it, right? Pretty basic math. They convolute it and overcomplicate it so nobody ever gets on the scent of their BS. NPR. Trump vows to steal jobs from other countries in winding speech on economic plans. And he should steal jobs from other countries, because if we can make something cheaper here, and he takes tariffs and raises them so China can't import a bunch of cheap goods, so we have to buy 3 of the same item to replace 1 that's made of quality, and America decides to know how to manufacture that, and Trump supports their businesses, I think that's a win-win. Because I'd sure like more materials to be made here so spy gear doesn't end up in it. I'd sure like my pharmaceuticals to be made here rather than what a catastrophe could be if someone decides they don't like us very much and we're buying our prescription goods, some of the most important prescription goods, from overseas. Did anyone know that? Sorry, I didn't mean this to be Economy 101, but the economy is what's going to decide this election. It's why Kamala is decimated right now, because she has no economic principles but 4 years of failures. Trump floats limiting U.S. income tax and replacing it with tariffs for imports, and darn right he should. New York Post comes out yesterday, says, hey, Washington Post, Bezos is so nervous that so many of these economic principles, among many other things, are going to help Trump to win, that he's been holding up the Washington Post from endorsing Kamala Harris. Seriously. The New York Post, however, has no hesitation endorsing Donald Trump. And they should. Anybody who cares about their pocketbooks, anybody who cares about a secure border, sensible immigration, anybody who cares about safer cities and supporting law and order, anybody who cares about a thriving, low-tax, low-regulation economy, anybody who cares about common sense policy to allow parents to choose what's best for their children, not the government. Anyone who cares about that America being respected on the world stage, to have our adversaries actually fear us again, would also endorse and or vote for Donald J. Trump. It's simple. I cannot, outside of a complete derangement syndrome that some have, understand why anybody could even fathom a vote for Kamala Harris. You basically want to take the United States of America and burn it to the ground with that vote, in my humble opinion. This is who you're voting for. This is who you're going to cast your vote for. Now, it's a dark screen right now. Don't worry, I'll change that here, because I want you to feel the agony of what is Kamala Harris.
And let's not be afraid of having a little joy to the point of, what makes you feel good about your work.
Deep, heavy-hitting commentary. No economic plan. No, she's back to happy, joy.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years, you were vice president, not the president, but why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done, that haven't been done, but need to be done.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. An improvisation.
Perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength.
Well, my weaknesses are actually strengths. Oh. Yes. Very good. There you go. Very good.
I really do value having a team of very smart people around me.
I work too hard, I care too much, and sometimes I can be too invested in my job.
I'm sorry I worked on that this morning for you. I realized this was going to be a serious broadcast, so we just have to, seriously. She literally pulled directly from the show. There is no difference between Michael Scott and Kamala Harris. There is none. We've seen this show. We've watched it. We laughed at it. Nothing about that show should be anywhere involved with this country and the leadership of this country. It was made to be a comedy. No one should make a joke of the great United States of America, but that is what Kamala is doing. We need a real leader. And Kamala can't even fake being a good leader. She can't even fake it. Fake it till you make it, right? Well, she doesn't even make it across the starting line. I love you all. Hope you enjoyed this. Just what Trump announced there, what he released, devastates the Kamala campaign. Because people will understand common sense economic principles. And that is what he provides America, a very black and white blueprint to what our future could look like. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.